everybody. Welcome to Whiskey with a Werewolf Hunter. I'm Brian Easton, author of the Autobiography of a Werewolf Hunter series. And as you can see right now, we are not at the Werewolf Bar. We're actually up in my study and or slash monster room. And so tonight I just wanted to air an interview that I did with Miles Boothe last weekend. And this is in promotion for our Legends of the Werewolf Hunter Anthology that we're working on and that we're going to be publishing in October of 2021, Halloween time. And so this week, just sit back and relax and enjoy this interview. It's about an hour long, but we had a lot of fun doing it. So here it is.
I'm Miles Boothe, and tonight we are interviewing Brian P. Easton, author of the Autobiography of a Werewolf Hunter series. Brian, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing great, Miles. How are you?
I'm doing great too. Thank you so much for coming on and for starting this entire project that we're about to discuss. It's an amazing project to even think about in scope. And I cannot wait to see how this turns out.
Yeah, me too. I'm real excited about the great group of people we've got on board so far, and excited to see what they're going to have, to bring into the table. And yeah, I just can't wait.
It makes two of us. So for our new listeners, new viewers that don't know what we're talking about, Brian has opened up his series to guest authors to write a story. We're going to do an anthology, and it's we're going to put the cover up right now. This is the cover in progress, and this is going to be stories written in his universe. He's allowing other authors to play in his sandbox for the first time, which is an amazing opportunity, and it brings up the first question that I have. What inspired you to open up your universe that you've created to let other people come in and write stories about your creation?
Well, I don't know if any one particular thing just woke me up in the middle of the night and inspired me, but I had always been, since probably the end of the third novel, The Lineage, I had really been impressed by how big what I had created actually was. When I started out, of course, this was not the intent. It was a series of short stories that I wrote, back in, the early 80s, and it was something that I had fun with, and it kind of matured and evolved into the thing it is now. And that kind of world building that took place was a very gradual process. But when the third book was finished and I kind of stepped back from it and I kind of went, holy crap, there's a lot here. There's a way lot here, way more than I can handle. If I wanted to try to do justice to it, I won't live long enough, to really do justice to it. So I thought, wouldn't it be cool if other people were, first of all, interested, in adding something to this universe? First of all, I try not to be so arrogant as to think that anybody is just going to jump at the chance to, to do that. But I thought, wouldn't it be cool if there would be, such people? And the more I thought about it, I thought, I think there might be a few. And so I reached out to those that I knew and that I trusted, that I knew were good writers, and said, hey, I'm thinking about, putting this together. Do you want to play in the sandbox? And nobody said no, which just thrilled me and made me feel very good about the series and myself. So yeah, that was kind of the main thing, was just the scope of it and how much there is to tell or could be to tell. It's a huge universe.
It is a huge universe. When you first mentioned the idea to me, the ideas just started bouncing around the room, and there's so much that can be done. Let me ask you this. When you started to think about that, did you have thoughts of particular characters or storylines that maybe you never went into yourself, but that you'd like to see done?
I kind of went into it with the idea that I wanted to be surprised,
Okay.
because I learned a long time ago, whether you're dealing with a writer or an artist or a musician, you'd never try to pigeonhole their creative process.
Sure.
You let them do their thing.
Yeah.
And then you're going to get the best work out of people if you just let them do what they do best and not try to micromanage them or even necessarily even put any kind of ideas on them.
Mm-hmm.
You know. So more than anything, I was just interested to see where everybody would be coming from their own personal point of view on their take on what I had written and how they would approach that. So, no, I don't think I really had anything that I really wanted to see explored any more than I just wanted to see the different angles that there were, the different perspectives that are unique to each of us.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to go ahead and mention now that currently there are 4 books in this series, and you're working on the 5th right now, but the first 4 are Autobiography of a Werewolf Hunter, Heart of Scars, and The Lineage, and the Michael Winterfox journals. And that's for our newer authors that are new to this idea, the authors, that may want to submit something, because we do have 3 spots open that we're going to make available for people to just send in a script and see what we have going on. So for anybody interested in that, you go to embypress.com and you'll see the open calls. Look on the website or the link on the website and follow the instructions. Send in your ideas, and you may be chosen to be in the book. Getting back to your universe and what we were discussing, specifically in The Lineage, and I think after that one came out and I said, this is my favorite book by far, which is saying something with your trilogy at that point. It was a trilogy. When you were coming up with the scope of it and all of the characters, when did you realize that it was really going past just Sly's journey and perspective into one human being's experience, and you had created an entire world? I mean, was this in Heart of Scars, or was this in? Well, clearly, you had to have the idea before you started writing The Lineage. But
I think what really spurred the idea that this was bigger than Sly. Well, let me step back. It's always been bigger than Sly.
Right.
It was Michael Winterfox's game to begin with.
Right.
And it got passed down to him. But we're introduced to Sylvester as the first entry in this series. And we're introduced to his life and how he handles things. In the Winterfox journals, of course, in the prequel that I'm series that I'm writing, it's a whole different ballgame, a whole different time. But I guess to answer your question, there is a scene in Heart of Scars where Sylvester is on the Isle of Man, and he is there. He's been trying to run down these leads to try to find where the grounds of St. Dismas are. And this, just to make a long story short, this kind of is like part of the one of the big plot points of the book. You know, where are the grounds of St. Dismas? St. Dismas being the patron saint of prisoners and other things. And there are schools and there are, parishes named after him all over the world. Not as many as there would be St. Patrick or some of your better known saints, but there are places. So it ends up it's on the Isle of Man. And while Sylvester is on the Isle of Man, he comes across the big bad for Heart of Scars, Peter Stube, who is a historical werewolf, and I made him into my own version of himself for Heart of Scars. But when he meets him, he shows Sylvester a cemetery, and he says, "In this cemetery are buried all the hunters who came before you, 99, I believe. There were 99 of them that he had killed." People who had come after him and that he had killed over the ages from like the 1500s. And he said something to the effect of, "You didn't really think you were the only one." And, Sylvester's like, well, kind of actually I did, to tell you the truth. And at that moment, I had to say, I kind of did too. But when I thought about it, it makes perfect sense. There is no way anything that is this powerful and this evil is a one-off, by anybody's estimation. So I thought, well, who are these other guys? Who are these other people? And then that begged the question, well, who are these other wolves, that are out there? And I had already kind of set up a world where there was already different factions, just within what we knew of the beast. You had the Gandians, who had this kind of, it wasn't really talked about too much, but it was inferred that they had this dynasty that had been in effect since the Middle Ages or something, and that they were like the most powerful werewolf house in Europe, or were at one time, and today, who knows? And then there's, of course, Peter Stubb's outfit, La Voisin. I don't even know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but that's the Jabberwocky, the big criminal hiding in the shadows of other criminals. So, and that was run by different wolves. And then you had the Black Cross and the people who were in that, so it's like the scope of this thing was wide open. But I think that's when I really kind of got the first kick in the pants to kind of start looking a little deeper into how big this world could be.
It got big.
Yeah.
It got real big. And to my estimation, there are not many series that went into that number of characters and that amount of depth. Certainly not in the werewolf fiction. An amazing read as it unfolds through the course of the book.
That's one of you hit the nail on the head there. Nobody's done this with werewolves, to my knowledge,
at all.
And it kind of seemed too bad to me. And it always had. I mean, it's the whole reason Sylvester exists in the first place is because I looked around at the landscape, of monster hunting and, the vampire slayers that were big in the 70s and stuff. And I thought, well, where's the werewolf hunters at? Where are those guys? I'm like, well, I guess I'm going to have to make one. So I kind of stepped up to do that.
The monster hunter has existed for so long, and you nailed that persona in the first book, and then the second book elevated things to a place that I was not expecting. I'm going to kind of take a detour here real quick and ask you, what are your hard spy novel influences? Because it's something that not a lot of people talk about, but the amount of research and the amount of puzzle pieces that you put together as far as just the spy aspect of this is amazing.
Yeah, I don't know that I'd like to tell you that I've read every book Tom Clancy ever wrote, but I haven't.
Right.
I don't even know if I saw the movies, saw some of the movies, but I can't say that really consciously influenced me at all. What influenced me more than anything was, I guess, the secrecy that such things like this, would require. Mm-hmm. I'm a deep believer in the deep state. At one time, I could have been called a conspiracy theorist. I don't know that's actually a thing anymore, given some of the things that we've seen. But if we're talking about werewolves and monsters and supernatural creatures, I thought, what the hell? Let's go for the whole thing, So, a lot of this stuff is completely artistic license. The Victorian ring and all that. But that just kind of plays into my idea of what probably really goes on behind the scenes. Maybe not to that extent, of course, but the kind of mechanisms that are in place, gears within gears, almost like a Star Wars Imperial, mindset of control.
Without question. Let me ask you this. Did you ever read any Robert Ludlum? Did you ever read Ian Fleming? Did you ever read, anybody that's stuck in your head is like, wow, I really like how that element works? Because you went to painstaking lengths to make sure you were accurate. And you got pretty deep into how these organizations conceptually would operate if this was a thing, if they were
right.
A werewolf,
right.
Bad guy.
Yeah, I may have read an Ian Fleming novel once or twice in my life. I can't really put my finger on which ones that they were, but I'm not a huge spy guy. I mean, I watched, I guess, watching the Bourne Ultimatum and some of the Bourne series
Mm-hmm.
is supposed to it being really impressed by a spy movie as I ever was, except for, and I have to say this, Casino Royale. To a guy who never was interested in James Bond in his life, Daniel Craig hooked me on with Casino Royale.
Yeah, he took
And
it.
I've been a fan ever since.
Yep, definitely. Yeah, that was a welcome change too. I think for a lot of people. So it's interesting that you didn't have a huge spy background, and yet you've integrated it so smoothly into the series. And
Well,
then,
research does, you mentioned the amount of research that went into it, and you're right. I mean, I did do a lot of research, and I think research sometimes has the effect of uh, producing what you might expect to see if I had already read all those novels.
mhm,
See, I went into research and how does this work and how does that work, and I integrated it. Where if I had read those novels, maybe I wouldn't have needed to have done so much research. I don't know.
no, I don't know because you're dealing specifically with Canadian intelligence and whatever countries you're operating in, and then you've created a lot of your own organizations. So
Well,
speaking
right,
from
and
our
that's
point of view, yeah, you would have still done the research, but I think I was just wondering if you had inspirations or if you just said, "Wow, when I read this, I thought it was really cool, and I wanted to put that into a werewolf world."
one of the things that I'm recalling is when I was looking into some kind of an organization, uh, was being impressed with the length and the breadth of the Commonwealth, the
Mhm.
British Commonwealth, all the countries that fall into that club, and
Right.
that's pretty much what it's considered, right? It's a big club, and they share their certain benefits and things. But I was like, there's no way an organization like the Commonwealth is going to exist without some kind of internal, regulation, or without some kind of internal or even external police force, uh,
Mhm.
to protect it and to keep the member nations in line along certain things, party line and whatnot. Um, and so the Commonwealth of Nations really was kind of a gateway to me for Heart of Scars and all the things that transpires, government wise within it. Because I started looking into it, like this thing runs all over the planet,
Yeah.
and Canada's a part of that, and so are a lot of the other cool countries, Australia, New Zealand, and uh, so
The fact that you took it global and did it so seamlessly was also a big, big win in my book. I mean, once it's hard, number one, to just integrate supernatural into reality because the suspension of disbelief thing gets tough.
right.
But once you figure out how to do that, and then you take it out of the environment that you perfected it in, that gets tough too. And man, you just ran with it.
Thank you.
No, absolutely.
And I think even more, I think you see lot more of that globetrotting in the lineage. There goes because it goes all over the world.
Yeah,
You
no,
know,
I mean, literally, there's yeah more globetrotting there than in the other books. Although it builds from book to book, and each book has different countries and different locales that are featured.
which thoroughly enjoyed doing. By the way, every time
Yeah,
had to go to a new country, I was like a kid. It's like, oh, what are we going to find out about this? It's going to be nice and juicy for the story.
yeah,
Uh, even the little islands, like Malta,
right.
and its whole history, and yeah, it was just a lot of fun, especially going into the Himalaya too.
Oh man, and you pull it off really, really amazingly well. I mean, to the degree that you know, I'm not going to ask you to give away your secrets, but there's several of those passages where you're like, did he actually go there? Just to be able to nail down like the scenery and the vibe of the place. And it makes it a great read, which is the purpose, of course. So that
Well, I
that was
appreciate that.
definitely accomplished. Let me jump jump again. So we did the 3 books where Sylvester's the main character, and now you're doing the Winterfox books. And the first one has been out for a little while, the Winterfox Journals, and the second one you're currently writing.
Right.
Do you have a trilogy planned for that, or is that going to be something longer or
You know, I really don't know right now. The way it's set up, the way that it's progressing right now, it could be a trilogy. It could also go 6, 7 books.
I was wondering. Yeah.
Just not sure how I want to. Not sure. I'm not there yet as far as how I want to go with it. I'll know more once I'm finished with the second installation of Winterfox. Right now, I just broke ground on chapter 5 last week, and we're dead in the middle of World War One in Belgium.
That'd be amazing.
Yeah, I mean, we're in Flanders, we're in mud up to our hips, you know, and Michael is just, it's not what he thought it was going to be, you know, coming from a background of, hiding the forest, right into battle, you know, with war cry and you're in mud, you're in trenches. The enemy very seldom presents himself, you know, it's not something that he expected at all. And of course, how could it be? Not just the way that things worked out fighting wise, but the entire scope of the thing is way beyond anything he's ever experienced. There's even a part in the book where he's on the boat sailing to England with his unit, and he just can't get over how big this boat is. He's never seen anything like it. He didn't know men could build boats this big. And then he says, you know, if I thought the boat was big, the water goes on forever. You know, he'd always heard about oceans, but he'd never seen one before. And this is just kind of setting him up for what's coming. But he is a warrior at the heart of him. You know, he's a young man of 17, of course, who lies about his age, much as Sylvester did, to get into the U.S. Armed Forces. But he lies about his age to get into the Canadian Armed Forces. He crosses the border from the United States into Canada, and Sylvester does the other way around when he enlists. Yeah. He goes from Canada into the United States because neither those countries were fighting that particular war at that particular time. He's right in the middle of it all, and of course, he's only there to hunt for werewolves, for a specific werewolf. Right. And this is all just kind of background noise for him. Okay. It's all camouflage for him. All right. How better to make a move on your enemy than go as a part of a unit where they don't know who you are. They don't see you coming because they're right there among the rest of them. And it's getting pretty intense. In fact, I was writing, like I said, I just started chapter 5, and I was writing on it on Friday. And I sat back from the page and I thought, you know what would be really cool? And I thought about it for a minute, and then I thought, you know what, I'm going to do that. I'm going to do that because it would be really cool, so I'm going to do it. It threw my whole idea off course, but that's the way the best parts come.
Yeah, I was going to say that.
Your ideas go right out the window, and something new and better and fresher comes along. And my next few writing sessions are going to be involved with this incident where Michael is he's on leave. He finally gets like a 5-day leave after being in the mud for however many months. And of course, he uses it to his advantage to pursue his other war. Right. And being in the part of the world he's in, he doesn't have to look very far. You know, we're talking about, you know, an area right next door to the werewolf capital of the world, which was France. Mm-hmm. I mean, there are more werewolf trials and, you know, werewolf historical type figures that come from that area of the world than I think there are pretty much anywhere else. At least that's commonly known. Mm-hmm. And so, I'm having a lot of fun just using old folklore and historical documented trials and things and bringing that to bear, all with, you know, being perceived through the mind of this 17-year-old Northern Cheyenne boy who is abroad for the first time in his life with nothing but his sense of duty and his skills, you know. And so he's so much different than Sylvester. It just every day that I write him, he just gets a little bit more different, which is important.
The first book was very different.
Sylvester, in hindsight, after reading a little bit about Michael, you don't really understand how broken Sylvester is until you read about Michael and what Sylvester was supposed to be.
Okay.
And you realize how broken the guy really is. But yeah, I'm having a lot of fun writing it. I haven't had this much fun writing a book since the last Winterfox.
That doesn't have the readers excited. I don't know. I don't know what would. I'm completely intrigued now. I'm ready, ready to read.
Yeah,
but it'll be a little while. So,
well, my motivation is to not screw it up. Every time I think I get a really good idea, I get really nervous.
Okay,
See, now I've got to execute this and not mess it up.
that's pretty
Because I'm not going to know what other people think about it until it's already out on market. You know, I've got to be satisfied with it before it leaves me to go to the editor or to the publisher. If it doesn't pass, if it doesn't excite me, I don't expect anybody else to get excited about it either. So
at this point, I think a lot of people trust you. So we're looking forward to seeing what you have going on. I don't think anyone doubts your abilities at this point. That's coming, and that's a lot. Let's talk a little bit more about kind of the parameters of the anthology and what directions authors might take that in. So they have a range of times that they can operate within. And are there any times that you had mentioned the 99 Hunters that came before Sly, and certainly there's modern era versus the 80s and 90s. Is there any time off limits or time periods that you would say you would rather see material written in?
No, not at all. Not as long as that in some way or some form it can tie in to the universe.
Okay.
And I don't think that's a hard bar to clear, given as much the scope, the width and breadth of the universe is pretty big. So I don't think you have a problem doing that. In fact, one of our writers, I think, is planning on, and I won't say who or what, but one of our writers, I believe, is planning on writing something that kind of spans from the dawn of creation.
Wow.
And kind of looks through the evolution of mankind, and keep with one eye on the beast and how it progresses as well. So I'm really looking forward to reading that as I am all of them.
Yeah, that sounds amazing.
Yeah, no, I have no time periods that I've got outlawed or blocked off or anything. In fact, I welcome different times, different places, different parts of the world. I mean, like I said, it's a global thing, and it's a thing that's been around since the Stone Age. So you can do a lot with it as long as it ties in, and not necessarily with by a thread, by some obscure back, but where any reasonable person could read and go, okay, yeah, I see where this is coming from.
Absolutely, it's got to be part of the world without question. All right, and out of the entire cast of characters that you've created, there are only 3 that are off limits. If I'm
right, yeah,
Sylvester, Michael, and Jericho.
Right, yeah, Sylvester, Michael, and Jericho.
Okay.
Now I may have, and Jericho is off limits for everybody. I may have allowed a dispensation for Jericho with one of our authors after talking with him and kind of seeing where they were coming from. I'm pretty sure I'm okay to sign off on the person writing what he's planning on writing, because it doesn't really. Jericho is a big mystery, which is one of the reason that I don't really want people writing about him. He's a mysterious guy. his ends are unclear, and what exactly he is or represents is a little unclear, and that's deliberate. It was deliberate from the first time that I introduced him as a bounty hunter.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's off limits. Sylvester's off limits, of course, for obvious reasons, and also Michael, also for obvious reasons. But Dan Roger, Tanya Clemens, there's a lot of different characters in there that you could choose from. Even werewolf hunters. You've got Yosefet Baranov from the Soviet Union, who was with Sylvester in Siberia when he came up against the Darkest Wolva. His story would be great to read.
That would be very cool.
There's Graf Rudolph, who has spent his life in pursuit of Peter Stube because it was one of his ancestors that signed his death warrant, and yet he didn't die.
Right.
So he's like this knight of the Orthodox Church, and he is got this holy commission to do. So even he's not off limits. There's lots of things you could do, and it even doesn't even have to be a character, that shows up. You be your own character as long as it fits in somehow and pieces together with the universe.
Very cool. All right. So there's a lot of latitude there, and what people need to do is, for the writers that want to submit something by February 15th of 2021, they need to submit the outline of their idea, and then they'll have until next fall basically to turn in a final story, and then we're going to publish it after that. So
October 31st is what we're looking at, right?
Exactly.
Halloween 2021, perfect time.
That is a perfect time. So that's when we're going to have the book in hand, and that's going to be something to look forward to. Very, very cool. Let's move into another aspect of things that we've talked about a little bit before, and that's how to translate this written work into film, the video. And it's something that not a lot of people go into, but in our world today, it seems to happen more and more often. And with the streaming services, we have more and more people looking for content. And this is some amazing content. I mean, I would love to see this turned into a long-form TV series or a major movie film. I guess you've been approached over the years by different people sending out the feelers to see if maybe something could work out. And, you're no stranger to that kind of process. But the game has changed so much, especially with the pandemic now. So moving forward, would you rather see your material in long-form TV or in major motion picture form?
Oh, definitely. I'd like to see it as a cable TV series.
Okay.
Picked up by just any of the. I mean, from HBO to Internet Movie Database is now doing their own original series.
Everybody's in the game now.
Yeah, everybody's getting on board with it, and for years I dreamed of a major motion picture, and I still wouldn't kick that out of bed, Okay, yeah, but I think to really do the story justice, and they do such amazing jobs with their work these days. Really? It's like we've hit a new gold standard when it comes to these kind of TV series. Excellent stuff. I mean, not everything, of course, but the ones we're talking about. And I don't think that there's any way to really be all inclusive and to really do justice to the material than to have it as a series that goes from episode to episode and season to season.
Yeah.
I think you could easily do a couple of seasons out of one book. And maybe even more depending on how you wanted to stretch it, But yeah, that would be my preference if you put two contracts in front of me today. I'm going to pick the one with AMC or Stars or whatever rather than Paramount or MGM.
I gotta agree with you there. because having 10 hours or 12 hours or 13 hours to tell a story versus 2 hours, told a couple of times, 2.5 hours, it's hands down. You get so much more quality, so much more story, so much more justice done to the original work. And it's kind of
And the
sad.
other thing too is when it comes to major movies, um, you know, they're especially with something like this, they're so heavily focused on computer graphics
Yeah.
and CGI animation and stuff, and I don't want to see that.
Yep.
If it ever comes to light, I would rather it be a low budget with quality acting and quality storytelling, with some even perceived effects and practical effects over some big explosion in your face. There's a time and place for that, of course, but I don't want it to. I wouldn't want it to turn into uh, something gaudy and something that panders to the lowest common denominator of the male moviegoer like myself. So yeah, I definitely would want to see some attention to dialogue, to mood, to lighting, even to color. I mean, if I could have my way, we'd dial the color down on this baby to about 25%, just enough where there's color, and let it and go with that, because that to me creates a mood
Yeah,
that you can't come up with any other way.
yeah, agreed on that as well. That would be amazing. Do you have any particular series that you would say, wow, that got the closest to how I would like to see this turned out, or any directors or
I
anybody?
don't really have any directors in mind. At one time, I might have said Rob Zombie, but I think that time has come and gone.
Yeah.
Directors I can't say. I can tell you some of the series that I've really enjoyed, and there's been a lot of them. And Deadwood, for one, the Deadwood series pretty much. Well, there were the Sopranos first, of course. That's the godfather of all these series, right? No pun intended. But and then you had they just kind of kept coming. Deadwood is one I probably watched that entire series 6 or 7 times.
Gotcha.
Swearing and all. It's just good storytelling. And I've enjoyed The Walking Dead. I have enjoyed Boardwalk Empire and Rome, and I watched Game of Thrones like everybody else, and there's just been so many good ones that my confidence in the industry is way up here, because of those series. And the movies, unless it's being done by Disney or Marvel, it's probably more like down here.
Oh, that's a topic. Maybe we'll drift to that in a minute. You had mentioned Rob Zombie's day seems to have peaked and maybe descended a little bit now. What about casting for characters? Because that's kind of the same boat these days. Like you can't rely on the faces from the 80s or even the 90s or 2000 anymore. You got any ideas of who would play who these days?
Yeah, I've really tried hard to bring that into the 21st century. When the first time I ever thought, who would I get to play Sylvester, in the movies, there was no question in my mind. Mel Gibson, a la Lethal Weapon.
Yeah.
Slightly or very unhinged, I guess. Warrior with this kill record and personal problems haunting them. I'm like, that's my guy.
Yeah.
Fuzzy mullet and all. That that would be him. But of course, time moves on, and we said, things mature, they evolve, and I really had a hard time coming up with somebody. Daniel Day-Lewis, and again, this is not current because Daniel Day-Lewis has retired, and even now he's a bit too old to take it up. But I always thought if you could take his performance as Bill the Butcher from Gangs of New York and Nathaniel Bumppo from Last of the Mohicans and put them both together, you would have just about Sylvester Logan James.
Okay.
And but like I said, he's gone to the people that I think of now for Sylvester. I think of Guy Pearce. Some of his performances in things like The Proposition and at the end of The Road were and I don't know if you saw either one of those, but he plays a very convincing, sinewy hard ass, I guess, and slightly grimy, you know, because we're not talking about, when we're talking about Sylvester, we're not talking about, your knight in shining armor. We're talking about a guy that's going to get down and dirty because he's dealing with something more evil than most people can, can conceive. So an actor's got to be able to pull that off. He's got to be able to project that kind of borderline, sociopathy, but still have a big enough heart and still have the audience rooting for him. And that's a fine line to walk, when I'm writing, and and I am quite aware that I have lost some people along the way where I just went too far for them and they could no longer root for Sylvester. I'm like, well, I understand that, so I think that's another balancing act that would have to be done if it ever went to a motion picture or to a series, like you said. Liev Schreiber was another one that I had thought about. Although he seems to be more suited to a werewolf.
He would look better as a werewolf.
Well, he played Sabretooth, in one of the X-Men movies, So yeah, he would be a good werewolf. He'd be a good Sylvester too. He's not quite as raw and sinewy as a young Clint Eastwood, as I kind of always pictured Sylvester's body type being. Any which way you can, every which way but loose. His Philo Beto days, that's this, or a young Scott Glenn from Urban Cowboy. Okay. Scott Glenn is a hell of an actor, and he's just a hell of a persona. And when he was younger, he could have nailed it. I wouldn't have even called anybody else if he would have said yes back in the day.
And so there's anybody right now, like just say that mid-20s to mid-30s age range that you find impressive?
I'm not as up on those actors as I maybe.
I'm not either, so I don't know. Yeah.
And it's been a year since I've been to the movies, so good God, they've not even been putting anything out to speak of, or at least around here. I look forward to those days being precedented again.
Here, yeah.
Back to the movies. No. I don't know. Guy Pearce is about the most recent I can come up with as far as somebody that I could really see. And I'll tell you something else. Acting and actors aside, I would just about as much like to see an animated version of the series as I would an actual live action series.
Yeah. Okay.
If the animation is done well enough, gritty enough, I think that would be incredible to see.
Yeah, we've kind of talked about that before, and you had mentioned the episode of Love, Death, and Robots. And
right.
What's the I forget the title.
Yeah, I do too. But it's the end of World War II. Mm-hmm. They've got the Russian or the Soviet special forces on some kind of a secret mission in Siberia, and they've got all these ghouls that have been plaguing the countryside. You could choose your monster there, but in the feature it was ghouls.
Yeah.
And the artist and the director on that did such a fantastic job. I watched it 2 or 3 times, just imagining those as werewolves.
It's very easy with that setting and those soldiers and that whole setup. Absolutely, you can see that.
Yeah, I mean, because that appeals to me, and I think that shows in my books. The blending with either Western or military or spy with the occult, with horror. By themselves, they are what they are, and they stand alone. But you mix them together, you've got something that's not really been before. or at least not very much.
Not much at all, right?
So with Winterfox and that series, I've got the chance to kind of do that, from a Western point of view, at least more Western than before. I mean, it's early 19th or early 20th century, so it's pretty much same as. I mean, World War I is basically the Civil War with a few tanks and some bombs. It's not much has changed warfare wise.
Right.
So yeah, I like the twisting of those genres, and that episode of Love, Death, and Robots just nailed it as far as I was concerned. So I would love to see some kind of animation like that.
That would be very, very cool to watch. I would be down with that as well. Let's take this in a little bit different direction than what we've been talking about. And you had mentioned the Disney Marvel kind of thing that's going on out there. So I'm going to ask you, just cold and on the spot, how would you fix the Universal monsters right now? And I understand that takes some.
I have an answer for that.
I bet you.
I have an answer to that. First of all, I would not try to reboot them into the modern age.
Right.
Would not try to do that. Your monster fans, your Universal monster fans, by and large, and there's a lot of them, do not want to see the Frankenstein monster in the 21st century.
Right.
And what that would look like. They don't want to see the creature from the Black Lagoon in the 21st century. And this is my opinion. I think this is what I would want to see. If we do a Creature from the Black Lagoon reboot, I want you to start it off back in the 1500s in the Everglades with a bunch of conquistadors walking through the marsh, and one of them getting killed by a gill man. Them, fighting it out, or maybe not the Everglades, but wherever it was that they found the fossil in the original, and you show that body descending down into the mud with the hand sticking up. And then you flash forward, a couple of 200-300 years, and there you've got the iconic creature claw sticking up from the mud. And then you go from there. And you don't necessarily do a retread of it, but you keep it a period piece. Mm-hmm. Creature from the Black Lagoon was filmed in the 1950s. So keep it in the 1950s. You keep it 2020's version of the 1950s, which is going to be different than the actual 1950s. You can't help it. It's going to be different because our perspective is different.
Absolutely.
And the same thing with all of them. It's amazing to me how many Universal Monster fans disrespected 2010's Wolfman until The Mummy came out with Tom Cruise.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, everybody loved it. Everybody had nothing but good things to say about the Wolfman. And I like the 2010's Wolfman from the get-go. I mean, I didn't like everything about it, of course, but I thought it was good. It was mostly stayed good because it was serious. It didn't laugh at itself, and it was a period piece.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the other thing, films like Van Helsing, think they try to make the Universal monster some kind of a humorous jaunt. I mean, you've got to be, in my opinion, you've got to go pretty dark before you need some comic relief.
Yeah.
And maybe that's just me. Some people need to get a breath of air, quicker than other people. But for me, comic relief is fine, and the Universal films certainly had no shortage of the comic relief. But to make it a running joke, to make it some kind of a constant tongue-in-cheek film, you don't do that. Don't do that. Take your monsters seriously. Let them take themselves seriously. Keep it period, and of course, get yourself a good director, writer, and actor. That's about as best of advice as I can think of for that.
Gotcha. All right. Well, fair warning. We're going to do interviews with other authors that are contributing to this anthology. I'm going to, I think, stick with that question as kind of a connection between all of the interviews, and just see what people come up with, because I think that everything that I'm hearing about the Universal monsters and the Dark Universe and whatever else they have now, the Dark Army, they keep getting further and further and further away from anything that I feel like is going to work. And I just don't understand how you can mess up perfection so bad.
And there are a good deal of Universal Monster fans who don't want to see remakes at all.
You don't have to have remakes.
They're not interested in that. Leave the originals alone. And I understand that from a certain point of view, but it's not like the old ones are going to go away if they make the new ones. If you don't want to watch the new ones, you don't have to watch the new ones. Stick with the black and whites, and that's fine. And I understand it, but uh, yeah, but that's something to contend with when most of your Universal Monster fans are over the age of 50, and sure you've got new people coming on board with it and stuff like that. But I think that makes up a minority of that particular demographic.
Definitely. Well, I think that today's younger audience too, they're used to a completely different level of technology and presentation, and they're used to watching a phone and being able to dial up any number of streaming services and so forth and so on. So I don't even know where you go to find the Universal monsters right now. And
I don't know as far as streaming. I know that there's no shortage of DVDs on them. It seems like every year somebody releases a brand new collector edition set of DVDs.
When was the last time you bought a DVD?
Yesterday.
Really?
Okay. I am pretty much old school. I like my DVDs.
Okay.
I really do. Yeah. In fact, I bought a Pink Cadillac with Clint Eastwood.
All right.
As the bounty hunter with Bernadette Peters. That's the one I bought.
Hey, all right. Fair enough. Taking us back there.
Yeah.
Nice.
Well, and the other thing too, with the monsters and the Dark Universe, I can see where Universal could make the mistake the first time, because everybody's trying to emulate the MCU, and try to make this do what they did, and they were going to do the same thing. They were going to try the same thing, with the Dracula Untold, and then Tom Cruise's The Mummy, and nobody liked it. Nobody wanted to see that kind of thing. So you'd think that they would have learned from that, because that's the other thing. Universal Monster fans are not quiet about their opinions.
Nope.
They will gladly tell you all day long what they think about things. So to come back and try to do that again just really seems like nobody learned anything the first time around.
They didn't. Did you see The Invisible Man, the recent one?
I did, yeah.
What did you think of that?
And as far as a moody, psycho kind of a picture, I really enjoyed it. I would not count it as Universal Monster canon. I would not consider it a good reboot for the H.G. Wells, Invisible Man. I thought it stood alone for what it was, but if that's going to be your archetype for your new universe, no thanks. Yeah, I don't. I'll probably go watch it, but I'm not going to get on board with the whole.
Hey, no, but you got to call it a swing and a miss. I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
It was a fair movie, I think. It wasn't bad, but it wasn't compelling, and it certainly didn't set up any characters that I found compelling. So
yeah, pretty forgettable.
Absolutely.
I don't remember the actress's name. She did a hell of a job as being a frightened.
She did a great job. She was in the tail, and I forget her name too. But regardless, it's not a character that I was invested in. That I can't wait to see what she's doing today.
Right, absolutely.
She had her experience. She went through it all, and hopefully she kept all the money, and now whatever's going on with that.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think we were supposed to anticipate seeing her as the Invisible Woman next.
Right.
I think that was the intended point.
Isn't that what's planned?
I don't know, but that's what when I watched it and saw it to the end, I thought, she's there, she's got the suit, now we're going to go with an Invisible Woman, and that would kind of.
I had to look it up. I think that there is going to be an Invisible Woman. I don't know that if it's going to use that character or her. And I know that there was something I saw the other day talking about a new Wolfman movie with Ryan Gosling.
Ryan Gosling, yeah.
And
well, I'm not going to diss anything before I have a chance to see it, but Ryan Gosling done some pretty amazing work. Some of it's really offbeat, but it's been like what was it, Baby Driver, or no, just Driver or Drive.
Driver. No, it was Drive. Yeah.
Drive, yeah. That had me on the edge of my seat. I love that movie, and I thought he did really good in it, and he would make a decent Wolfman. but the movie's more than the actor who's portraying the title part. And if they're going to, again, if they're going to make it in 2020, I don't see myself really uh, jumping on board with that.
Yeah.
We'll see. We'll see.
Yeah, for me, I agree. I think that I wanted to hear more about what it was about. I don't think that you can just attach an actor to something like that and not give details about how they're going to do with that. It reminded me of my first reaction years and years and years ago when they did Interview with the Vampire, and then you heard Tom Cruise was going to play Lestat,
Yeah.
and you're like, how does that work?
Yeah.
Even though
especially when Rutger Hauer was her choice.
Exactly, yeah,
Hauer, Tom Cruise.
So they're pretty close, but sort of off a little bit. Yeah, so that was, and I would hope that they would have learned from that, but they never do. So we'll have to see what they come up with. But I have a lot more faith in your ability and in our authors group ability to come up with something that would be better. Maybe that's what we need to do.
Right.
Come up with some stuff and send it to Universal so that we can save the monsters. But that's going to have to wait until another day and another interview. I think we're running out of time here a little bit. Been going for an hour strong. So, any last comments or anything that you wanted to say before we close this one out?
I want to say, anybody who's out there who's thinking about you might want to submit something for the anthology Legends of the Werewolf Hunter. Please don't be intimidated by anything that's been said here tonight, or think that maybe you don't have the ability to do it. Send in what you've got. Send in your ideas to Miles or to myself, and you can contact me at brian@werewolfhunter.com, and tell us what you have planned, what you have. And if if this is the first time you're hearing about it, you've got plenty of time to download the books. They're available on Nook and Kindle. If you want hard copies, you can get those too. Amazon be glad to send them to you, and you can read up on it and submit something. But we look forward to hearing from you. We got, like I said, we have like Miles said, we have three spots to fill for the anthology, and we hope you're one of them.
Very good. Absolutely, we do. We are looking forward to hearing from people. So I'm gonna close this out by bringing people's attention to your YouTube channel, Whiskey with a Werewolf Hunter. So if you haven't watched that one before, you've got to go back and see all the episodes. And there are, what's the total number of episodes now?
Boy, I don't really know. I started doing that back beginning of 2019, I think. And I was doing one a week for several months.
Right. You've got a good collection now. So yeah. Talk about in-depth information about the books, guest authors, guest commentators on different aspects of the novels, just amazing stuff. That's great. And of course, the books that are, as you said, available on Amazon. And that's where they find the information. So we'll close it out, and I want to thank you for being here tonight, and we look forward to putting this book together. It's going to be
all right. Thanks, Miles. Appreciate it.
All right, thank you very much.
So a big thanks to Miles for having me on that Zoom interview, and we're going to be having interviews with the other authors that are going to be involved in the Legends of the Werewolf Hunter anthology. So those will be coming up probably after the holiday season is over with at this point. But I want to thank you for watching Whiskey with the Werewolf Hunter. Next month it'll be a brand new year, and we're going to start season 3 of Whiskey with the Werewolf Hunter, and hopefully we'll be back at the Werewolf Bar at that time. So until I see you then, happy hunting and mind the moon.